With my expectations through the roof, I couldn't help but think that there was no way that this movie could live up to the hype. For so long, I'd speculated on what it could possibly cover, and with every new piece of information, new theories and story threads grew from the woodwork, and my hype only grew. I try not to think too much about a movie, especially right before its release, but usually it's just impossible not to. Welcome to Sandwich Reviews. I'm the Talking Sentient Sandwich, and despite some reservations, I had an amazing time watching this movie. At first I was worried, with the first act being a little shaky, but it eventually makes sense, at least emotionally. There was a certain sense of aimlessness to the story, until a certain point, which I will keep vague until I talk full spoilers, but before then, I couldn't help but feel off. But once the first act ended and the story really got started, I was grinning ear to ear for the rest of the runtime. And even before that, the dialogue and comedy was wildly entertaining. And I really liked the villain too, though I could have used much more of her, and just more from the antagonistic forces in the story. But my biggest problem is how contrived most, if not all of the sequences were. I feel like I need to keep stressing just how much fun it was, but once you think about the plot for more than a minute, it's hard to ignore how much everything felt like it was written backwards. The situations were thought of first, and how the characters got there was figured out later, which is a bummer and took me out for a lot of it. The movie does slow down every once in a while to go for the heartstrings, but if not for the mile-a-minute jokes, even the self-indulgent ones, I think the many holes in the plot would have become a bigger issue. But at least for now, the movie works. And most of the choreography and action is also incredible. The cinematography not so much, with some dips into shaky cam, and I didn't like that, but that was rare, and there was one standout shot. And I'll talk about why I think they had the shaky cam later in the spoiler section. But before we get there, I have to mention one last thing, which is a slight spoiler, so if you really don't want to know anything about the movie, you might want to duck out. Though I don't think it's a spoiler to say that this movie is filled to the brim with cameos, because obviously that's going to be the case. But it's almost to the point that if you're not terminally online or haven't seen most of the Fox superhero movies, you might be lost during a lot of this. But if you're a superhero fan, and especially if you're a fan of the first two, check out Deadpool and Wolverine. Even if the emotional beats don't hit for you, you'll still have a fantastic time. Now, it's time to talk spoilers, and my goodness, there are a lot of them. So if you somehow got this far into the review and still haven't seen the movie, pause the video and go watch it. I'm not going anywhere. Ready? Alright. I liked Wade humming along with the Marvel music and his comment on how arduous the production for this movie had been, with Fox being bought out, but I still wasn't sure how I felt about it all. The in-sync credits were somewhat fun, and maybe my expectations were too high for that specifically, but it didn't set the stage as well as I had hoped, especially with how spotless and clean the costume looked, but more on the suit later, because the concept of it is phenomenal. Using Wolverine's long-dead skeleton to kill a bunch of people along with Deadpool doing the dumb dance moves is cool, but the moment I saw the first name on the bone, my exact thought was, this isn't the credits, is it? And that was only the beginning of me wondering if this movie was even going to be good, because just after that, Wade's character is completely changed. Changed in a way that makes sense for how he would grow and mature, but I was still taken aback with what the writers had decided to do with his character. And it was obvious that the end point of him being alone so that he could go after Wolverine was what they were after, but one of those was clearly written before the other. I like what they do with Wade, just eventually. And the reason why his story felt off was because the whole point of the second movie was that the family Wade had created needed him just as much as he needed them. And it also ended on the assumption that they needed him for a specific purpose. And there's a chance that purpose could be the multiversal road trip to save the world that was the third Deadpool, but we all know that this was never the plan. And speaking of his family, it would have been real nice to see Cable and Domino, but they are completely absent from the movie. Cable, I guess, can make sense to write out, just say he went back to the future. But Domino? She should be there. I don't know, maybe it was a scheduling conflict. But all of my concerns simply washed away once the story got to the Mad Max wasteland and we met Johnny Storm. From there on out, I loved it. Though before that, there was a very Joel Schumacher-inspired suit-up sequence, and that was also fantastic. The suit looked way too crisp and clean, and I had the concern that it would keep that look for the whole movie, like I did when I was watching the intro credits, but that concern was unfounded. Not only did the suit get battle damaged, but it consistently gets more damaged and dirty throughout. And after seeing the Schumacher suit up, Paradox has an amazing turn, and it seems like, despite some terrible dialogue where he literally just states that he wants to control the TVA, he could be an interesting villain, but that's never capitalized on. He also brings up the idea that every universe has an anchor being that without, the universe will die, which is new and will be very important, I assume, but it's an idea that I had a hard time getting on board for. That could be down to me already being taken out by asking the question, why would Paradox grab Wade and ask him for help? I mean, wouldn't he know that Wade would want to protect his own universe? That still doesn't make sense to me, but my biggest problem was how the narrative set up Paradox to be another antagonistic force in the movie, with him creating a universe-ending device, rightfully pointed out by Wade as a MacGuffin and nothing more. But why didn't the story push that idea? He doesn't have to be threatening, but he should at least be taken seriously. Nevertheless, all of the contrived storylines do allow for cameos galore. That all starts with the Wolverine montage, and I loved seeing Wolverine vs. Hulk probably more than the big cameo right after it. It's only for a second, and I would have loved to see more, but for now, that's enough. But Henry Cavill had my jaw on the floor. Is he the new Wolverine? Deadpool introduced him as if he was, so I'm guessing that's the case, but even if it was a John Krasinski-style Easter egg, it's still amazing to see. Elektra and especially Blade were unexpected and jaw-dropping as well, but the moment Channing Tatum waltzed in with the full Gambit costume, weird mask and all, had me stunned. Him showing up to play the version of Gambit that never got off the ground was something that, despite my long list of expected cameos, I never would have had on my bingo card. His line, "I think I might have been born here," had me dying. Their action was what came off as shaky cam, and that was probably filmed like that to hide the flaws and lack of good choreography, but that's no excuse. Just from the way it was filmed, I was a little let down by that sequence. However, there was one take of Wolverine and Deadpool killing or attempting to kill 100 Deadpool variants, and that was easily my favorite moment from the whole movie. There's a lot of really great action between Wolverine and Deadpool specifically, but that was just amazing. And like I mentioned before, I could have used a lot more from the villain, Cassandra Nova. The way she got into people's minds and the creepy way that she could hold someone by the inside of their skull, really well done. But there wasn't a lot of that, and the way they got rid of her was again contrived. Though she was able to highlight the themes of the movie fairly well, and in that, the story pokes at Deadpool asking the right questions. However, it didn't hit it home, at least for me. The movie almost tipped over into greatness by showing the audience how alone he was, which is a concept that I've seen executed incredibly well, and in this case, it just didn't work as well as it could have. Because him being alone was an idea that flew in the face of the last movie. I did like how Wade wanted to be important and wanted to be somebody. I just thought that emotional storyline could have worked without excluding Vanessa and X-Force. And of course, within seconds, the movie clarifies that they won't be respecting Logan or his selfless sacrifice, but I'm not sure if his appearance was as necessary as it was made out to be. This Wolverine, or at least the one we see most of, is apparently the worst. And the whole time we were being told that he did something so unforgivable that the entire world gave up on him. But the reveal that it was a killing spree caused by the death of the X-Men just wasn't that much to me. Maybe it's just because Wolverine has done much worse in the comics, but that didn't seem to hit hard at all. Though I can't deny I love seeing a comic-accurate suit on Wolverine alongside Deadpool in any circumstance. But I don't know if this movie justified literally digging him up from his grave. But those were my thoughts on Deadpool and Wolverine, which if nothing else brought the Fox universe into Marvel and almost makes sense of the multiverse saga. If you enjoyed it or have other problems with a contrived story, let me know down in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe for weekly video essays and reviews, and enjoy a delicious sandwich.